welcome back in. We're on to week 2, so that means we're going to talk about some streaming defenses and kickers for this week. So let's go ahead and get right into it. We're going to start things off with the defenses. Now, for me, the top streaming option this week is going to be the Chargers. They are playing the Panthers. They are rostered only 12% of leagues. The Chargers are coming off a really strong performance with 14 fantasy points. They did that with 4 sacks and an interception against the Raiders. This week, the Chargers will be taking on a Panthers defense that was just absolutely abused by the Saints last week. And to be honest, one of the biggest questions marks we had about the Saints defense this year was going to be their ability to get to the quarterback. It's something they really struggled with last year, but they had no problem whatsoever with the Panthers. The Panthers just allowed a 10% pressure rate, the 4th highest rate, one. And so the Saints ended up finishing with 4 sacks and 2 INTs. Chargers have 2 really good matchups as well coming up with the Panthers and the Steelers, but the Chargers obviously having a healthy Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, I think they can have a field day Panthers offense, and Bryce Young continues just to look completely inept. So let's keep moving here. And a defense that I've talked a lot about, and they're kind of on borderline for me because they are rostered about 43% of leagues, but the Seattle Seahawks this week get the New England Patriots. And I actually think both of these defenses are actually very streamable. The Seattle offense did not look great, but the New England offense also did not look great whatsoever. They are one of my more favorite streaming options as well, just behind the Chargers. The last week, the Seahawks defense provided 11 fantasy points, finished with 2 sacks and 2 INTs. The Seattle secondary is one of the better duos in the league as well. And one thing you should really like here in terms of probably being able to get some sacks is the Patriots last week allowed 7 pressures on just 24 dropbacks, but only resulted in 1 sack. So I think Seattle is a really good streaming option this week. And like I mentioned, I also don't really mind the Patriots either because the Seattle offense didn't look great. And then you also have Kenneth Walker, who possibly could be dealing with an injury as well. So this game also only has a 38.5 point total as well. So I don't think either one of these defenses are going to hurt you either way. So let's keep moving here. Let's move on to the Denver Broncos against the Steelers. Despite the Broncos losing 26-20 to the Seahawks on Sunday, their defense was not the main reason for the loss. Their defense provided 2 sacks, 1 INT, and a fumble recovery for 10 fantasy points. This week, the Broncos take on a Steelers offense that was top 10 in pressure rate allowed in week 1. And so I do think the Broncos are another really good option this readily available. If you can't get your hands on the Chargers or Seattle, I think they're the next best option. There's a couple of honorable mentions I wanted to mention. An honorable mention that I did want to mention, I kind of go back and forth on this one as just being somebody you should just definitely look to add, is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, they struggled last week against the Dolphins, but we're talking about a Dolphins offense that's probably one of the top 10 offenses in the league. This is a much better matchup against the Cleveland Browns. The Browns just allowed 17 pressures and 6 sacks against the Cowboys. Now, obviously, the Jaguars aren't the Cowboys defense, but still, I think the biggest question mark here for this week and thing to monitor if you're going to make this move is going to be if Jack Conklin and Jedrick Wills are available because they both missed week 1. I think that had a lot to do with why their offensive line looks so dreadful because the Browns typically have one of the league's best offensive lines, but missing those 2 pieces, it is a massive blow to that offensive line. Not to mention the fact that David Njoku also went down with an injury. He may not be available. So if those 2 offensive linemen are out this week, then I think Jacksonville's an easy play that you could fire up. And not a lot of people are going to be looking to go to the Jaguars this week. So I think they are the other option. Past them, I think some defenses like maybe like Tennessee or Washington. Washington getting the Giants this week. Daniel Jones is always going to Daniel Jones. So I definitely think those are 2 other options you could look for. But I think some of these other ones are going to be a little bit easier to be had. So let's keep moving here. Let's move over to kickers. 2 of these kickers are guys that I've already talked about in previous videos, but I'm going to keep talking about them until they're rostered in more leagues. Jake Bates is only rostered in 16% of leagues. The Lions have the highest implied team total heading into week 2 with a team total of 28. Bates last week converted on both of his field goal chances and also made both of his PATs. Bates will remain one of the better streaming options week to week because of the big leg that he has. I mean, remember when he was in the UFL, he connected on a 64-yard field goal. He also is playing on one of the top offenses in the league, and those are things that we should be looking for in a kickers. On a week-to-week basis, what you should be looking for in your kicker is teams with high implied team totals, and the Lions are going to provide that week in and week out. They're probably going to be in the top 12 almost every single week in terms of applied team totals for that week. One thing that will be frustrating, though, when it comes to Jake Bates, will just be Dan Campbell's willingness to go for on 4th downs. We can take away opportunities. Either way, Jake Bates is a really strong play this week against the Buccaneers. Let's keep it moving. We have a rookie kicker here. Talked about him last week. We're going to talk about him again this week, and that's going to be Josh Karty for the Rams. Only rostered in 2% of leagues. The Rams have the 7th highest implied team total this week as they take on the Cardinals in week 2. Karty in his rookie debut connected on a pair of field goals. He made one from 40-plus yards and another from 20-plus yards last week. He also converted on 2 PATs, giving him 9 fantasy points last week. Karty will remain a weekly streaming option because of the offense that he plays in, much like Jake Bates is. So I think both these kickers, and it also helps both these guys play in domes. You're gonna have over at least half your games being played inside a dome, which is always going to be good for a kicker. Lastly, I know this isn't going to be one that sits well because the Jets' offense looked pretty bad and kind of a mess. But Greg Zuerlein is rostered in 24% of leagues. And, honestly, little callback from Greg Zuerlein, just to remember, he's still one of the better kickers in the league. I mean, in 2023, he was playing on one of the worst offenses, if not the worst offense in the league last year. And he still managed to finish his kicker 13. He averaged almost 9 fantasy points per game. And he did this while only kicking a measly 16 PATs. And PATs are a big weekly boost to your kicker. What really helped him last week was his league leading 13 field goals from 40 to 49 yards. He also nailed another 5 from 50 plus yards. So Greg Zuerlein obviously still has that big leg. And that is going to be something that is going to be valuable for Greg Zuerlein. And I think that is going to help him this week because the Jets have the 11th highest team total, making him one of the better streaming options on the week. I think some other honorable mentions of some of these guys are already gone in your leagues. Matt Prater for the Cardinals, Cam Little for the Jaguars, Cameron Dicker for the Chargers. And if Matt Gay is able to make it back because he suffered a sports hernia, he would miss last week. I don't know if he's going to be available this week, but if he was, he would be another option because he's only rostered like 15% of leagues. So I think those are your streaming options this week for your kickers. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments section below. I'll answer anything you have. You want to know maybe who should drop to add one of these players, we'll let you know on that. Hope everybody has a good week too. We'll see you soon here for more content. Lock it in here. Hit that like, subscribe button if you like this content. We'll see you on the next one.